Hi friends, welcome back to Faith and Arrow Homestead. My name is Jaylee and today I have a trick for you that I actually just recently learned and I've started implementing in the kitchen and I really love it. So I wanted to share it with you guys. Now, a really common kitchen skill that I want to teach you that you may not already know is how to make a roux. And if you do already know how to make a roux, don't go anywhere because the trick has to do with that. But I want to just give you a quick standard definition. A roux is equal parts fat and flour, and it is a thickener. So for example, if you are making a chicken noodle soup, which has a chicken broth base, depending on how gelatinous your chicken broth is, that can tend to be a thinner base. So say you're making your chicken noodle soup and you decide halfway through the recipe that you want to make a creamy chicken noodle soup. You would make something called a roux, and it is a thickening agent. And it gives you the opportunity to add more liquid like milk or heavy cream, for example, and it thickens it up so that it goes from being a thin base to a thicker base. A normal chicken noodle soup to a creamy chicken noodle soup. I use roux all the time. I use it in my homemade macaroni and cheese, which will be coming to this channel here very soon. And in a variety of other recipes. So I'm going to teach you how to make a roux. However, I'm going to teach you how to make a roux using sourdough discard. And if you think about it, there's no reason why that wouldn't work because all sourdough is, your sourdough starter, is a combination of flour and water. Now, depending on the hydration of your starter, it could affect this a little bit. And just for a quick definition, when somebody says hydration, they are referring to how much water you have in your sourdough starter. So if you did 1 cup of flour and 1 cup of water, you have 100% hydration. If you did 1 cup of flour and 3/4 cup water, you have 75% hydration, and so on and so forth. Obviously, that would mess with the thickening a little bit, but not enough that I'm going to even really mention it again beyond right now in this video. So I don't want you to worry too much about that. This is one of those things that you can kind of mess with a little bit. It is not like baking. If there's a little bit of variation, it's not going to throw this whole thing off. So taking the water out of the equation, if you use equal parts fat and sourdough starter, it's very similar to using equal parts fat and flour. And you get all of the nutritional benefits of the sourdough, plus it's another opportunity for you to use up your sourdough discard if you need to, instead of throwing it away. I don't ever throw away my sourdough discard. I always find a way to use it, and this is just another way. I do want to mention that it doesn't have to be discard. If you have active sourdough starter and you need to use it, you can use that. Active, non-active, it doesn't make a difference because again, we need it for the flour. So for a standard roux, what I like to do, and when I looked this up on the internet to see what other people are doing, there's a little bit of variation, not enough for me to be concerned, so I'm gonna share with you what I do. My ratio is 1/4 cup butter, 1/4 cup flour, to 2 cups of liquid. The liquid comes in to whatever recipe you are making. So for example, my macaroni and cheese recipe uses 4 cups of milk. So you would use 1/2 cup flour and butter. Does that make sense? So I wanted to give you that ratio. And then what I'm going to show you here today is going to be 1/4 cup butter, 1/4 cup sourdough starter, and 2 cups of milk. So let's go ahead and get started. So here I have my sourdough skillet and I'm gonna put it on medium-low heat. The higher the heat, the quicker you have to work, and it's really not necessary. So I'm gonna put this on medium-low heat. Here I have roughly 1/4 cup of butter. You don't have to use butter. It needs to be some sort of fat. You could use a lard, tallow, bacon grease. I've never done a roux with oil, but I imagine you'd be able to just the same. But I almost always use either butter or bacon grease. Those are the two that I have the most experience with. This is going to start melting pretty quickly here in my skillet. So while that's working, I'm going to go ahead and get 1/4 cup sourdough starter ready here. This is my active sourdough starter. And I'm just going to scoop 1/4 cup. Now, it is very important, in my opinion, that you use a whisk. I have had the best luck with my roux getting them really nice and smooth using a whisk. Now, my butter is melted and bubbly, so I'm gonna go ahead. I'm not gonna put it all in at once. I'm gonna add a little bit, and I'm going to start whisking. it gets pretty clumpy right away, keep whisking. Just like with a regular roux, you are cooking out the flour flavor. And this is what takes a roux beyond just being a thickening agent. It is also a flavor enhancer because you are cooking the butter and the flour. Sourdough has a very specific flavor, so in doing so, in cooking it like this, you are enhancing that flavor. And guys, it smells so good. As you can see, it's sticking to the bottom of my pan a little bit, and it's not necessarily doing that because it's cast iron. What you're going to see in a moment when we add our milk is that gives us the opportunity to deglaze our pan. And all of that that's sticking to the bottom will come up when we add our milk and add excellent, excellent flavor to our dish. So now I've got 2 cups of milk here. You do not add it in all at once. I like to drizzle it in slowly and start whisking it into our roux. And you'll start to see it go from clumpy to sauce-like the more we mix. I go slowly because the cold milk brings down the temperature of my pan. So I give it time to warm back up as I go. And you can't really see it, I don't imagine, very well, but all of those bits that were stuck on the bottom of our pan are gone, and the bottom is now clean, and all of those bits are in our roux and are just adding delectable flavor. Now the trick with a roux is it's however much time and energy you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. I like to have a really nice, smooth sauce at the end. And so I take my time. I've only added, I don't even think a full cup yet to this. I let it get up to temperature, I let it bubble a little bit, and I very slowly add my milk. If you're in a time crunch, you can add it quicker than this, but you just run the risk of it being clumpy and not as nice and smooth and free of those flour clumps as if you just immediately poured in all of the milk. Plus, letting it get up to temperature and bubble for a minute helps it stay nice and thick, because you might notice that if you added all your milk in at once and start whisking it in, it would be runny. That's not to say that it would not thicken up, because it would thicken up, but you're going to spend the time one way or the other. You're either going to spend the time now, like I'm doing, adding the milk in slowly, whisking it in slowly, letting it get warm, or you're going to spend the time waiting for it to come back up to temperature after you added the milk in all at once and letting some of it evaporate off and thicken up. So the time is going to be spent one way or the other. So I just like to do it now because it enhances the experience for me, I guess I could say. I like watching it thicken. I like feeling like I'm in control of the final product. And I'm continuing to run along the sides here and make sure that nothing gets stuck on the sides too bad. Look at how beautiful this is looking. Absolutely gorgeous. Can you imagine if you were making a macaroni and cheese, adding some sharp cheddar into this? How beautiful and thick and delicious that would be. Once it gets to this end stage, it can appear thin, so I do definitely like to wait in between pours to see some bubbles. If you let it go for too long, it can start to stick at the bottom, so you really do need to be whisking consistently. You can let this simmer for a minute or two, and it will continue to thicken up even more and just be so gorgeous. Now some examples that I would use this roux for: macaroni and cheese, obviously, like I said. This is how I make my filling for chicken pot pie. So I will have already sauteed my carrots and my onions, whatever I'm planning on putting in there, my garlic, and then I would make this roux. Oftentimes I leave the veggies in there and just add more butter and make the roux directly with everything in there, and that works out fine. You can also remove your veggies if you want and make the roux and then add them back in. But this is often how I make it for chicken pot pie. And Instead, I don't use all milk. I use chicken broth as well when I'm making chicken pot pie. And then mine always ends up being a little thin. And then when I add it into the oven to bake it, it thickens up when it's in the oven. The longer that you have it on heat, the thicker it's going to get. That's true for any sauce. If you're making a marinara sauce or a tomato-based sauce, the longer you let it simmer, the thicker it gets, right? That concept applies across the board. And as you can see here, even with the added hydration of my sourdough starter, we still ended up with a really nice, beautiful, thick roux without having to add or reduce anything. I stayed with my standard ratio. Again, that ratio being 1/4 cup of fat, 1/4 cup flour or sourdough starter to 2 cups of liquid. I'm gonna go ahead and shut off the heat. This is beautiful. This is the same concept for making gravy. If we were to be making a sausage gravy, I would have used butter, but the pan would have also had contained some drippings from cooking the sausage. And this is exactly how I would have made my breakfast gravy as well. And having the sourdough starter in there instead of the just using flour for breakfast sausage gravy, oh my gosh, can you imagine that flavor? So, so good. So obviously this is not going to be out of this world flavorful because it's just flour, butter, and milk. But I am still going to give it a taste because I want to see if it differs greatly from just a standard roux having sourdough in it. It smells fantastic, and it does have the slightest little hint of sourdough smell. That is so good. Oh my gosh. I'm just dreaming about macaroni and cheese right now. And I'm just itching. I need to use this now because I made this. So maybe I will make some macaroni and cheese for dinner tonight because at this point, all I have to do to make this macaroni and cheese is add some cheese and some seasonings that I'll give you when I make that video. And then cook up some pasta and add it in, and you would have a luxurious homemade macaroni and cheese. So that's probably what I'm going to do for dinner tonight. But anyway, you guys, I just wanted to come to you and teach you how to make a roux if you didn't know how to make one, but then also give you this little trick of using sourdough starter or sourdough discard in place of simply flour to make your roux, because that's a game changer. Being able to use your sourdough discard in things like macaroni and cheese, chicken pot pie, sausage breakfast gravy, the list goes on and on, that's a game changer. And it's just another opportunity for you to use your sourdough discard instead of having to throw it away and to get those health benefits somewhere else in your diet and in your cooking. So I hope you guys found this useful. If you have any questions for me, leave them down in the comments. And if you liked this, please give it a like, consider subscribing if you haven't, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. Have faith, my friends, and keep moving forward.